Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Morning Tech Show. And we're here with you on a Sunday this time. It all depends on when I'm in Honolulu is when we do the show. And fellas, I arrived back from the Indianapolis area to a broken hot water heater. So it
Welcome home, Todd.
yeah. So Rob and
Broken meaning leaking or broken meaning no hot water?
Slight
It's
drip,
both.
slight drip, and no hot water. And what's
Yeah.
what's the kicker is it's a solar hot water heater.
Uh,
So this
uh,
is it's going to end up being a $1,500, $2,000 day before it's all over.
Oh
Great.
my goodness.
It's not like I can run down to Costco and or to Home Depot or whatever and just pick up a standard hot water heater and throw one in. It's I will be calling a plumber this morning. I'll wait to have him come tomorrow because I'm hoping the solar comes out and does enough heat today, but to get us up where we can get through showers and everything. But yahoo!
Yeah, I had my water heater popped about a year and a half ago too. I had to replace it, so it made a huge mess on the floor in the basement.
Well,
So
it's just dripping now where we put a pan
Yeah.
underneath it, but it's just about ready to
Yeah.
blow.
yeah.
How old is
Just-
the water heater?
This house is 12 years old, so probably 12 years.
Probably right to the date of the warranty, huh?
Yeah, probably.
That's right. Yeah. Hey, Todd, I've been actually thinking about putting solar panels on my roof. There's a little bit of tech involved in this conversation, but I've been looking at trying to put about I think it is about 25 kilowatt hours of solar on the roof. Is that something you've ever looked into?
Yeah, I have, but they killed a lot of the tax rebates this year because they couldn't afford to pay everyone that's switching to solar here. And it came up. They're also doing these deals now where you can do a rental system where you pay a lower kilowatt per hour cost to, then basically the company comes in, puts it in. So it would lower your electricity bill by about half. Excuse me, sneezing on you guys this morning, but I better do introductions before we get too far down the road here.
Yeah, that's true.
And I want to welcome Mr. Don Bain, the Gadget Professor. Don, good morning.
Hey, everyone.
How are you? And
We're great here. Great.
you're in Scottsdale, yeah? So
That is true, and it's
Uh,
absolutely gorgeous here today.
are the snowbirds going home yet, or are they still all there?
No, they're hanging out till the end of the month, which end of April usually they're gone. Sometime in April they start leaving, and it's like a ghost town here. But this week and I think next week it's just mobbed here for two reasons. One,
Oh,
it's spring training here.
yeah.
So all the people come out and celebrate and go to all the baseball games. And today, actually, believe it or not, when I get off the air in about 2 or 3 hours, I am taking my mother, who is here visiting me from Pennsylvania, to the rodeo. Today's rodeo day, so we're gonna take that in. A little bull riding, a little bull throwing, and should have a good time.
Well, as I was coming through the airports yesterday, of course, last week too, it was spring break time, and so I flew Delta. I have to tell you about that, but flew Delta first time in like 10 years, and the gals that were sitting beside me, two college girls, and I'm going to tell you, I'm lucky I'm a sailor at heart because they were telling the stories of what they were going to do when they were here in Hawaii. Fellas, if you're in Hawaii, if you find two girls from Salt Lake that are downtown, you have a great time.
Really now, Todd? Yes.
Yeah. Because it was interesting to hear them talk. I just sit there and kind of play dumb.
Oh, sure.
So anyway,
Sure.
So anyway, we've got Rob Greenlee. Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Good morning, fellas. It's great to be doing the show today on this wonderful Sunday.
And so is it snowing or raining or I know
No,
the sun
actually,
doesn't, is the sun
sun's out.
Really?
Yeah, and it's not supposed to rain for the entire next week, and it's supposed to actually get up close to 70. I know we must do our weekly weather forecast.
There must be some global warming going around for Seattle to not have rain.
Actually, yeah, exactly. Well, actually, last summer we went 90 days without a drop of rain
Wow.
from I think it was from June through August.
That's that's
So,
that's that's pretty incredible when you think about it.
yeah.
Well, anyway, what I want to do today is I want to talk a little bit about the tech space, and I want to talk Don. Of course, those that don't know, the Gadget Professor is highly involved in the media space itself. He kind of works on the commercial side, so we're going to talk about that a little bit on what they're seeing in the commercial side of new media and the kind of some of the trends. We're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming NAB, although we cannot talk about certain topics because many of us have already been NDA'd on a variety of product announcements, so we can't bust any NDAs while we're on the show today, but we can talk around probably some generalities of what's coming and to be safe. But first thing I want to show you guys is, did you guys see our new blueberry.com website
Yeah,
design?
love it.
I
Very
did.
impressive.
Looks very Windows 8-ish.
Yeah, I kind of hinted to you that that's what we were
Yeah.
we were working on. And what we've done is we broke it up into really kind of like three categories. And of course, Brian will say it's two. It's only two. But we've got the create portion of the website and we've got the explore portion of the website. But on the create portion of the website, we've got a podcasting manual. We have our support section. We have our resource page. Actually, let me blow this page up a little bit, see if I can do that. Yeah, there we go. Responsive design. You see those windows grow as I did that?
Nice.
Yeah.
So
Very nice.
the resource size talks about all our products and services, and then of course we've got links into our hosting, our distribution stuff. So this has been a long time coming. We got some more pages to add, some more depth to it, but the create site we think is going to be a great resource for content creators. And of course, the explore side is what people are used to our regular blueberry.com website. And so they are two separate, complete separate entities. And we've been finding little things that we've missed here and there. So what we've done is we've kind of soft launched. And I don't know how you soft launch a website when you roll out a new design, but at least that's what we're saying. And people are sending us feedback, and we're adding, comments to it. So what do you think about the strategy there? You think our strategy is good? Or what's any thoughts on it?
I think you hit the nail directly on the head. It's great. I like the Windows 8 design. It's simple. It's clean. You don't have to do a lot of reading. You can just kind of look at it, intuitively know where you have to go and what you have to do. And I like the colors. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and go ahead, Rob.
I was just gonna mention. I think it's really, really fascinating from the perspective that maybe this kind of Windows 8 new UI is kind of a modern, more digitally savvy, I guess. And I think by doing what you did with that website, I think it's really interesting because maybe what the thinking is behind what the design of the Windows 8 may be kind of a cutting edge kind of design principle in it. And I think over time, maybe people will, as more and more websites maybe adopt this kind of navigational structure, I think it may become more standard than not over time.
Well, we kind of thought about way we wanted to launch this, and, we knew we wanted a redesign, but we wanted to make something that was really just kind of dead drop simple.
Simple, yeah. And easy for people to find things is really, really, really important in any website, right? And that's exactly what you guys have done here.
So, obviously we've got like the link to the PowerPress, we got media stats, but you notice we've got some stuff that's not clickable. It's just a button on there, but we've tried to make it, and I think up in this top column we may put something up there that rotates, and basically flips every 10 seconds or something. But we're trying to keep the site pretty minimal from just give people a few options and then go where they need to go. So, on the create site, what you'll notice is when someone then does and says, okay, I want to look at the podcasting model and I want to get started. Then we go into a more traditional blog layout,
Sure.
and get into the meat. But we try to make it so that they can navigate in. We're trying to figure out how we could keep this design throughout. But we just figured once we got into the depth, it really didn't make a lot of sense to
Yeah,
do
I think
that.
so. It's like the whole start screen paradigm, right?
Yeah,
It just launches you into where you want to go. Yeah,
yeah.
I think it makes sense.
But
The interesting thing about this that it's kind of weird, but many years ago I used to be a college professor. I used to teach this course called Communications and Learning Theory. And if you really stop and take a look back at the styling of just Windows 8 itself, the graphic styling, what you'll see if you really think about it is who started all this is Apple. If you think back to the clean Apple design and styling of the graphics, that's essentially where Windows 8 got its essence from, if you will. That clean, almost stark black and white or primary color look. And if you think back to the old Apple iPod ads where they had just the silhouette of someone dancing. I don't know if you remember it with the graphic
Yeah.
interface. It's kind of carried over to the Windows 8, and I think that had a lot to do with influencing the actual end design of the graphics, if you will. Just not only in Windows 8, but through a lot of the graphic styling today is starting to have that clean. Uh, Monochromatic. I know there's colors in there, but they're primary colors, and it's kind of interesting from a styling standpoint of view of how Apple really has influenced just the graphic styling in general. It's kind of interesting to me.
and
Yeah, and
another.
some
Go ahead, Rob.
I was going to mention, I think also a big concept behind this new kind of UI is the simplicity of it. And I think that's, I mean, if you think about, I mean, I think Don, you're right. I think in concept, but you think about Windows and even the Mac, these
Yeah.
small icons, when you could actually be very precise with your mouse and click on very small things. As everything is going touch and maybe gesture and voice, I think bigger targets is the key here, and I think you're going to see this is just my gut here. I think what you're going to see over time with Apple, I think Apple is going to, I think probably adopt more of what we see with Windows 8 in their stuff as well,
Okay.
where the icons are going to get a little larger, the targets are going to get more. And I think with Johnny Ive in there, I think we may start to see that stuff happen. It may not be this year, but I think over time, I think those things may be shared across both platforms. I think.
And what else you're going to see is when you come to the site with a
Oh yeah,
mobile browser.
Oh, that's nice.
see,
I
we've
hadn't
made
seen that.
see we made it so that the site was responsive, and you
yep,
don't have to have.
That's nice.
Whoops.
yep.
And now if I flip it this way, it does give me a little right and left. But when you're vertically with it,
I love that.
it
That's really
snaps
nice.
so that you can. So we actually disabled our mobile site because we thought that we didn't disable it. We just don't auto detect now, because now when someone comes in with the mobile device, they go, oh, let me go there.
Yeah.
And when they do, then, it just seems, I think it's going to work out real well. Time will tell on it. We'll watch the traffic, the mobile traffic, and see how it does. But, yeah, Angela was big on getting the responsive design down. And we also have worked on our accessibility too, so that the site is more accessible for folks that come in there that are, need an accessible site.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, anyway, let me, enough talking on that. But our focus, I guess, from that perspective was to, work with help the content creators more. And obviously, we're still trying to make sure audiences find stuff. And actually, that's round 2 of our initiative. We're going to go down later in the year, but we won't talk about that now. But so, I wanted to, yesterday, Rob, as you emailed me, and, people's schedules were trying to get people scheduled in. I wanted to bring Don in on the show
Hmm.
and to basically kind of, Don, I know that Mike works a lot of the commercial stuff for you now. You don't actively participate as much, but what are you guys seeing on your side? You got multimedia communications. You put together commercial packages for companies, for schools, for sporting venues, and so forth. What has the trend on your guys' side been in the last year from a media perspective? What are companies doing, and what is their focus right now?
Interesting question. Not an easy question to answer, but one of the things that we're seeing trending wise is uh, up to about 2 years ago, a lot of the productions that we were doing were long productions, over 20 minutes. And we're seeing absolute reverse of that. And we're seeing productions that are a minute or less, kind of commercial bam pack types of things. We're also seeing a lot of companies absolutely scrambling, just scrambling to try to make sense out of this social media uh, type of
Oh,
uh,
yes.
a lot of companies are absolutely lost, just lost because they have the traditional people that run their sales promotion and marketing and they just don't know how to deal with it. The other thing that you got to keep in mind, as we know, is that this stuff changes fast. And even Facebook now, from what I'm hearing the last 2, 3 weeks, is starting to fade in terms of membership because the kids are off this already. They're on to new stuff like Snapchat. I don't know. You guys familiar with Snapchat?
Hmm. Yeah.
That's scary stuff. But I was working with a company last week, and you talk about trending, and the guy, I sat down, new client, and we're just trying to get to know what they want to do a little bit, and they're trying to figure out what they want to do. And he sat me down, and he said, "Look, he said we want to produce videos." He said, "But everything's on the web today, and it's either on our website or they're searching it." And he said, "We're overwhelmed." And he said, "I don't know much about this space." He said, "But I just spent an hour yesterday, just 1 hour, trying to figure out where we have to be." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "This is what I've come up with after just spending an hour on the internet. I've researched some things in social media, and this is what seems to be the case. SmugMug, Tumblr, Rebel Monkey, Hootsuite, Facebook, Twitter, Google Plus, Pinterest, YouTube, Instagram, Flickr, Streamy, Flickr, FriendFeed, Vimeo, Delicious, Stumble On. Uh, I got about 8 more on here. I won't bore you with it, but he said, "What is all this stuff? Where do I start? What's important? Are they all important? Is one of them important? I don't know what to do." And I think it's facing everybody today. And the truth of the matter is, when you boil this all down, yes, you have to get out of there, but podcasters in general are on this technology and understand this technology and are up to date with this technology. And in terms of trending, that's what I am seeing. These people are just literally lost in space. And I kind of laughed when we started reading this list stuff because he said, "I'm confused. What is it all?" And they're great at making their products, but now in terms of marketing, training, uh, getting the information out there, it's rapidly changed. The whole paradigm of how they did business is it's shifted, and they're struggling with it. So that's what we're seeing in terms of trending. And then it gets to the next step: is do we do this in house? Do we do this out house? Do we buy equipment? Do we buy TriCasters? Do we buy live streaming stuff? I don't know what to do. So that's what we're seeing a lot of, and it's tough to answer the question because each business has its own individual problems when you're talking about wrapping social media. In the old days, you used to pick up the phone and make a cold call, and that's what I was used to doing. But those days, man, people don't answer their phones. People don't read their email at this point. So it's an interesting dilemma, and there's a lot of opportunities in that space. Believe me, both technically and also in terms of making sense as to a marketing strategy. So that's what we're seeing at least the last 6, 7 months for sure.
I was talking with my brother-in-law. He just retired from the Navy. He's a warrant officer retiree. Great credentials, master's degree, has a master's degree in education. Has just all these fantastic, basically anything an employer would love on his resume. Manage multi-million dollar budgets, manage people. Just this whole list of litany of things. And he sent me his resume, and I'm like, man, this has got to go from 3 pages to one. And we're talking about where to get out there and to where to get connected. And I said, hey, you need to get on LinkedIn. You need to make sure your LinkedIn, your profile's up there, your resume's up there. Where this is where you got to be. And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. So I think even people that are very educated and savvy are they even having troubles on where to connect with companies and how to get seen. And if an individual's having challenges, then companies obviously are too, because those same people are in those companies. So for your client there, Don, I would make sure that you add LinkedIn to one of the places where they need to be from a profile standpoint. But um so they're trying to figure out what they're going to do from a media standpoint. Rob, can kind of see this dilemma that companies are having, and it's not very enviable for a small company, is it?
Well, I think it's these changes and these shifts have been happening for many years, and I think a lot of companies never thought that they were significant changes. And I think you have this kind of this aha moment that a lot of these guys run into at some point along the way, when the momentum and the ways of doing things in their perceptions suddenly jump, and then they feel like they're way behind, and in a lot of ways they are way behind in their understanding and I mean, Don, all of those sites and services that you listed all have a place in different companies' marketing strategies. It's not that you have to be in all those places to accomplish your goals. It's just that you need to understand where each one of those has their strengths and their weaknesses in versus what you're trying to accomplish, and they cater to different communities. It's not you have to be in 30 different places and maintain all that. It may be with any given business you need to be in Twitter and Facebook, and that's it. And then other companies you need to be on Pinterest, and you need to be on Tumblr, and you need to. I mean, it depends. And it really gets back to digging in and understanding and being able to target your company's message to the appropriate audience. There has been a lot of discussion that I've heard here over the last few months about younger people leaving Facebook and going to other services. That could be happening. I wouldn't say it's a tsunami of a change. I think Facebook is still a very important place for a company or a person to have a presence on. Not everyone is going to do that. Twitter has some great uses as well. You just need to understand the actual medium and what it's good at and what it's not good at. And I think that's really what these companies need to dive into is start asking questions and doing research, and going in personally and opening accounts and playing around with it for a few weeks and see and really keep an open mind to it. And I think that's really key. I mean, I spent a lot of years in online marketing, and the landscape for doing this is not dramatically shifted from what it was a couple of years ago, but it's definitely, there's more people getting online. And I think podcasting is a good option from a marketing perspective, but it's not a good option for every company. It's a good option for some companies that have a certain kind of message and a certain kind of market.
So, Don, from your perspective, then, as far as the type of packages then you're selling, you've got companies that some companies already have some infrastructure, and then they're probably looking to either make the jump to HD if they haven't already, or they're just trying to figure out what type of stuff to buy to do in-house. How's that marketing changed from the way it was a few years ago?
Interesting. Obviously, everything is digital today, and the other thing that I'm finding that's interesting, which is good for us, is that a lot of these companies are actually procuring their own equipment, or in the market to procure their own equipment and put in a studio. As we all know, it's not a big deal to put in a studio today for not too much money. 10 years ago, what it would cost to put in a studio. A couple cameras, a TriCaster, didn't even exist 15 years ago. Well, it did. It did exist on the Amiga, but there's different types of devices that you can buy today that are cheap that give you high def quality. So they're actually bringing in a small crew, maybe 1-2 people full time, that are going to produce their media, both video, audio, and also someone who will just spend time dealing with these different types of social media things that are out there. The other thing that is interesting on the reverse side of things is I'm finding, because we do sell equipment, that there are so many companies now popping up with TriCaster. Not, I'm just saying TriCaster because I'm probably the most familiar with that particular technology. But in the last 2 weeks, I have received information from people out of the country who are making boxes that are very, very similar to the TriCaster. There's at least 3 companies just this week alone that have contacted us, and we're going to meet with them at NAB. And there's a lot more boxes that are coming out, which is interesting because now you have more selection. But the bottom line is, it's going to be driving the price of those boxes down. And it's astonishing the amount of technology now that they're packing in to these little boxes. But you can have all the boxes in the world if you still don't have that creative mind and the intelligence to understand pretty much what Rob said is where to target these things. What is your business? Who is your audience? What are you trying to say? What's the demographic? Those types of things are going to be critical for you to understand whether you're creating your own technology in terms of media or you're outsourcing it. So it's to me, it opens up a lot of opportunities both on the communication side and the marketing side to help people understand, sort through this stuff and understand what they should do, what they shouldn't do. But also on the technology side, outsource it, insource it. There's a lot of opportunity out there. So with change, there's opportunities. And the technology today is just, I'm looking forward to NAB because we're seeing just miniaturization. We're seeing the price points come down, and it's good for everybody. It keeps the economy moving, I hope.
In the last week or so, I've gotten a couple of boxes here that I'm testing, and one company sent me a box, and I've yet to release a review. But I compare it to other things that I'm using, and it's the particular box that I had is a box that helps you stream your shows, and the steps that I had to go through with this specific company to get up online was very, how should I say it, painful, and I actually had to use a manual. Um,
That's always a good sign. Yeah.
No, it's not a good sign when you have to use a manual. And, I look at some of the things that, like, okay, for example, Livestream last year introduced their broadcaster box, and I've got 2 of them, one for our TPN channel and one for my channel that I use for Geek News Central. And that box was so intuitive that, 15 minutes from the time the box was open to the time I had a live stream up and was testing it. And, that to me is the type of technology that, individuals are going to need to really make this jump. And probably, Don, in the previous times, you liked it to be hard for those companies to do that because that drove business to you, and you were able to, not you're able to serve that company and making it easy, and you did all that hard stuff in the back end. So from your perspective, I'm sure you've had to change your business model to evolve with the times so that, I guess the best thing is, that commercial where you have the easy button. Everyone wants the easy button now, right? They don't want difficulty. They want ease of deployment. And, myself personally, I think there's a lot of stuff a lot of opportunities being lost by companies like Wowza. They have a fantastic product, but it's one of those types of products that makes it very difficult to get deployed unless you have someone that's a geek and really technical and can go through the 25 steps to make it happen.
And can read the manual. They have to know how to read the manual.
Read the manual. I've complained to those guys 2 years in a row, and I don't see their product really increasing in utilization. And I think it's largely because they haven't made it easier. And we're using Amazon Flash Media Server. Believe me, if I had to set it up again, I probably wouldn't. Just because it's a pain in the butt to set up and get all configured. So, there's all these little things that, go into production, and people want to focus on production. They don't want to focus on, having to figure out how a box works. And I think at NAB, we're going to see more of that from what I've been seeing in my email inbox and what Well, people are being tight-lipped. Some folks are saying, "I'll sign an NDA." They don't even want to show you anything if you've signed an NDA. But from what I have seen, I think NAB could be a monumental show from a new media producer perspective. I think they're going to see, the broadcast people are going to have their stuff, but I think, I'm just looking at, I've got a couple of prime example number one. Ultra Studio Mini Recorder by Blackmagic Design. A simple SDI in or HDMI in, and what can I do with this? This can go right into a Mac and be the module I use for recording. And it's just an itty bitty tiny little box. And
Blackmagic's a perfect example. I mean, there's a company that's on the cutting edge. Their price points are fantastic for the most part. Their stuff works. And also, one thing I've noticed about Blackmagic is that they respond very quickly to the marketplace. If something's wrong, they fix it. If something is in need in the marketplace, they fill that hole. And as I said, the price points are pretty good. I'm impressed with Blackmagic just in general. I think they're very astute and they respond quickly, and that's the name of the game today.
And I think some companies are not taking advantage of that. I talked to the folks at Wirecast last year at NAB, and I said, here, you've got this fantastic software package. Put the hooks in to go into the Blackmagic Design Television Studio, and you have a switcher. For $1,500, you've got a four channel switcher with a lot of power, a lot of, you basically almost have a TriCaster-esque system. You have to have, of course, an additional computer to drive it, so that that ultimately is going to raise your total investment price in cameras. But did they listen? I don't know. We'll find out at NAB whether or not there's any integration or not. But I think companies that do integration with Blackmagic have figured out that they've got this great product line that the folks that I work with can afford, and we'll see where this goes. I'm excited to see what they're going to announce. And those guys listen too. You can go over there and say, listen, this is broken. Why? It sucks. And, they don't take it. They write down on a piece of paper and they take your inputs on board. And some companies don't like that when you do that.
They're there to learn.
Doing a little bit of our research around kind of new video producer boxes too. And Todd, I've noticed the same thing. I've noticed that these multi-camera kind of transitional streaming boxes are getting smaller and smaller. I saw one online that was about the size of like a mini tower computer that had, I think it had the capability of like 6 feeds or something like that, 4 cameras and Skype capability built into this box, and it streams out through and everything. It's about, I think about $4,900 or something like that. And you could pick this thing up and go, do portable events and things like that. And I don't know if that's the kind of thing that you're seeing, is that there's new software coming out, more compact hardware that can be easily transported to events and things like that to be able to do live and recorded, programs. So is that what you're talking about, is just more selection of that type of thing? I mean, I'm hoping that the price points will come down below $5,000, but that seems to be kind of like the base level of getting any kind of like really professional kind of multi-camera switching capabilities.
Well, if you think about it, Rob, these are all being PC based, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
If in order to do that type of video integration, you need usually a pretty high-end PC to start with. So the base cost just in probably the computer processor is a couple of grand, just that. So you add on this additional stuff, and very, very quickly you get to $3,000-4,000. And if they need to make a profit, they add $1,000 on for their profit margin. That's my speculation, not knowing any pricing points, but I think that's why you end up at around $5,000.
Yeah, I think here probably in the next year, it's probably going to come down, I would think, because the new processors that are coming out are going to be just kick-ass. I mean, fast and low power. I mean, it's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens here in the next 12 months around these type of devices and what is capable. I mean, it may come down to a point where at some point we all have tablets that are capable of doing all this. You know.
Yeah, potentially. Now, one company that I think that, I've been, I think 3 years in a row, I've been talking to the Live View folks, and their models changed over the past 3 years dramatically. It used to be you couldn't buy a bag, and then for under like 25 grand. And then their pricing has always stayed pretty steady and a couple of K a month if you're going to rent one. But I think they've gotten to the point where the technology's getting to the point where you can almost do what Live View does with maybe a Mac Mini and a couple of Blackmagic Design type of devices. Now it will be rudimentary, won't be as slick of a package, but I think what you're going to see is that potentially there's going to be more, AKA bag technology, more portable. Well, you just look at the new live stream broadcaster that they announced at CES. It's got an LTE chip built in, and as long as you power it and you got good, you wouldn't be able to use it for CES because the bandwidth is saturated there. But if you're at an event where 25,000 or 100,000 people aren't on the internet at the same time, you'll be able to use this little broadcaster box that they're coming out with with an LTE chip built in to, stream for $400 or $500 or whatever the cost of that device is going to be.
Yep.
And, what's your reoccurring nut on that? Maybe $70, $80 a month. That's a far cry from $2,000 a month with a Live View bag. I vowed this last year was the last year I'm going to pay $6,000 for internet at CES. My sole goal in going to NEB this year is to find my solution that will allow me to completely disconnect from the internet at basically at Las Vegas Convention Center and go live stream. Donnie, the internet held up pretty good at CES last year from a mobile standpoint. So do you, I think we're close in being able to do it. I think there's some risk, but I think we're pretty close in being able to come off the hardwired pipe, don't you think?
I think we're very close. The other thing with Live View, their price points were out of the just insane from day one, and I think they were able to maintain that because they didn't have much competition. Rev forward now 3 years, there's a lot of competition, and it's also putting downward pressure on that price point, and they would not budge from that, if you recall.
Right, not even budge, not an inch.
Yeah, they just wouldn't budge. And I found it so odd, and then I said, gee, there's just no one else out there. And again, there's the opportunity. There's that window of opportunity. They were the only ones in that space, and that they didn't have to change their price point. But now, 3 years later, there are a lot of companies banging on that door, and you're going to see that price point come way down. That's my prediction. I mean, less than half of that. And I also think there'll be situations. I mean, you couldn't buy that Live View box. Am I not correct? You couldn't purchase that. Is that correct?
The first year you couldn't. The second year you could. But it was still $25K plus a monthly connection fee because you're going through their infrastructure. You could never run it to your own streaming service.
Yeah, how convenient. I think there's a lot of pressure, and I think we will see. I'm looking forward to NAB this year more so than ever because I do think we're going to see a lot of companies entering that space. It's a wide open market, and there's a need for it. I think in general, the internet, the cost of the internet, if we can keep the Verizon folks out of it, is going to come down.
Yeah. Now, one thing I will say, though, is last year we saw a lot of bags and different kinds of things, but a lot of them tried to duplicate the live stream model. And I think what they're going to find is there's not enough need for that type of a service at that price point. And even though there are 4 or 5 vendors, I think those 4 or 5 vendors, if they're still in business, will be forced to adopt. And does that mean coming down in price? I would think so. So we'll see where they're at this year. But, there's this whole market. And believe it or not, I think live stream from their little broadcaster bag or broadcaster, a lot of people are poo-pooing that thing. But I'm like, okay, for CES, maybe no. But from a different type of event, you guys better shut the heck up because, I could take that little thing anywhere in Honolulu, do any event. on an LTE signal, as long as I got good LTE signal, and I know that I could do a 2, 3, 4 hour event, no issues, um, with that little box. And I've already proven it that I can do it with even with a MiFi card. But I like the ability of having that built in, just less stuff to pack out and hump.
Well, rumor has it that I know for a fact that I can speak on this, that Livestream's coming out with 3 new products that I'm sure of. And actually, I understand that this coming week, late next week, there will be a pre-announcement of what they're actually coming out with. And I also understand that within the next 6 months, there will be 1 or 2 additions to that little red box family, which should be very exciting.
Well, we'll see where this goes. Rob, it's an exciting time, yeah?
Yeah, I was just wondering what the thought was around. Do you have to have multiple, you know, multiple LTE accounts in order to run one of these things? And how do bandwidth caps kind of impact this?
Yeah.
Or are you going to go everything over to Sprint because they don't have bandwidth caps?
Well, I think, my understanding is that they've partnered with Verizon and
Okay.
they've worked some deal.
Okay.
But let's face it. AT&T just recently announced a tiered plan where you can have up to a certain 50 gigs for like $200 a month or $300 a month or something like that.
Okay.
From someone that's doing, if you're doing remote stuff on a regular basis, that's a no-brainer from a price point.
Yeah.
If you have the connectivity, but it's true, you will have some bandwidth considerations that you'll have to take into effect. And again, this is not a one solution, one-step solution. But what did I do at CES? I had 4 MiFis from Virgin Mobile. I basically paid for the account for a single month. We used them during the show, and then at the end of the month, the MiFi cards went dead, and they cost me $30 a piece to power them, and we had them. Every team had a MiFi device. Now, what I would do is if I'm worried about the bandwidth situation, I'll buy the non-LTE version, and I'll buy 5 MiFis from Virgin Mobile, and we'll use one a day, and burn the bandwidth on a single day, and still it's cheaper. People are going to think, well, $30 a day for internet. Well, let me tell you, it's cheaper than $6,000 for 4 days worth of internet.
It depends on what the basis point is, right? Yeah, that you're comparing. I mean, one thing that's a little bit off topic here a little bit is I noticed that the Logitech folks just put out here this last week a new webcam called the C930E, I believe.
I'll have to look that up.
That's going to have onboard transcoding of the video image, so it can optimize your bandwidth pipe for doing like live streaming and things like that. I'm currently using a C920, but I guess the new C930E will allow 4x zoom to the same HD resolution. I'm just wondering, is camera technology going to have a play in this here over the long run as well, in optimizing the bandwidth to get the same kind of video resolution?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think the bandwidth is bandwidth. A camera's only going to do so much to take advantage of the logarithms that are managing the speed at with which and the bandwidth it can produce. Certainly, the cameras, like these Logitech cameras, are dirt cheap by any stretch of the imagination for quality.
Yeah, I think it's like $100. This particular camera,
$129.99, and they're saying frees up PC bandwidth by putting video processing within the camera, adjusting dynamically to the available bit stream. So they apparently, and I'm sure you're going to have to use some service that works with this, but it's interesting, dynamically adjusting to the available bit stream. Does that mean that it's also going to know what is available from a IP standpoint? Is
I,
that what they're
I
claiming?
think not. I think it's more of a, at least right now, I haven't seen it. I haven't tested it out, but to me, it sounds like very excellent wordsmithing.
Yeah.
Well, you actually the camera actually you can't buy yet. It hasn't actually come out yet. So this is a brand new camera. The newest camera is the C920, which is what I'm using right now for this.
Okay.
But it's going to be interesting. I just wonder if more and more of this this optimization around bandwidth usage is going to start happening more in the camera too to help. I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. I mean, if you're entirely relying on your kind of your streaming PC to be able to do some of that, or is that going to be somewhat kind of augmented by the capability of the cameras?
Now they do say in here the result is a smoother video stream in applications like Microsoft Link 2013. So they do. It's probably going to work with certain apps.
Yeah.
Now, if companies like Livestream and other folks go in and do some adaptive stuff with these guys and work, I think that's probably a smart thing to do. But it only really solves the niche where, like Rob with you are on a camera right now. And, it may keep you from coming down in SD and staying in HD with not as good a picture.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say.
Have you heard of the Biscotti cameras?
No.
You want to take a look at those. It's called Biscotti. And they're going head-to-head with Logitech on this type of camera. And it's a wide-angle, high-def camera, very inexpensive. As a matter of fact, they just that's not it. It's called Biscotti, just like the cracker, the cookie, whatever it is. Biscotti. They have an interesting niche, but they just stopped making their main camera, and we're selling them 2 for 1. You can get 2 for $200. And it was a great deal. And now they've just come out with the new one, or it's going to be released very shortly. And it's taking advantage, the new one, of, again, maximizing it dynamically, maximizing the amount of bandwidth that it uses. So maybe there is a trend, but I think it's statistically, what it maximizes and optimizes is so statistically insignificant that it's more, it does it, but does it make a big deal at the end of the day? Probably not.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's going to be exciting to see what happens at NAB. I'm still locking in my travel plans on when I get in and when I go out. A couple of things dependent upon that. And,
so what are the dates of the NAB?
It's April
9th, I think it starts.
Yeah.
Which is on Monday,
9th?
April 9th, I believe, to the 12th.
It's 8th. I think it's Monday to Thursday, right? So it's it's April 8th.
So is it down in Vegas?
Yeah, it's in Vegas. So, and of course, it's a big event as CES from a hall standpoint. The halls are full from one end to the other. So
So are the hotels. I'm trying
industry.
to figure out where I'm staying this time. I don't know if I don't know if I can mentally take being downtown again.
I'm from a checkbook standpoint.
Yes. I'm with you. We'll probably be there again.
I would like to be on the Strip, but good Lord, it's crazy. I mean, it's like, yeah.
My wife showed me something that I thought was hysterical. Because I still haven't, I booked the plane, but I haven't figured out where I'm staying yet. We'll have to talk about that. But she said that the Hilton, which the one that's right next to the convention center, right now is $79 a night.
Huh?
And NAB $350 a night.
Right.
Same room.
Yeah, I was gonna say $79 a night to order 3.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
I know, Todd, it was actually fairly painful to stay up in old town Las Vegas for CES this year. That's a long ways from the convention center.
Well, if you look at it though from a cost perspective, Um,
Oh, I know. It was definitely cheaper. There's no question. But actually being on the ground and having to deal with that because there's no taxis up there. in,
No,
in the
there aren't
old
because they're all at the
old,
other
old
end of town. The other thing
yeah,
is they have the bus that runs, but they don't tell you the bus only runs once a day, but they don't tell you what time it runs. So
exactly,
that doesn't help you
exactly.
either.
Yeah, yeah. It was really a struggle. So I'm gonna work harder to find someplace down off of the strip. I think.
well, and believe me, I priced it all.
I
And,
know. I'm sure.
all you got to do is just add a zero and another number to the end of your hotel bill at the end of the stay. I was pricing NEB, and NEB staying where I normally stay was like $2,400, and staying downtown was like $400.
Yeah.
So that's
Well, and
that's
yeah,
$2,000.
yeah. I mean, and you rented a van, which definitely helped.
Yeah,
You could get back and forth. I didn't have any. I didn't rent a van.
that's true. So it does, and believe it or not, parking was there is a trick to parking at NEB, but you just, I mean, at CES,
It's a yes, yeah,
but you just have to be willing to leave 2 hours earlier than you normally would. If you,
yeah. No,
you
you
know,
guys are getting up at the crack of dawn to make it down
yeah,
there in time.
yeah. So
Yeah.
but that is that's the price you pay. But again, you know what happens when you stay in a regular hotel is you sit on the bus for an hour because the bus is stuck in traffic and everything else. So there is two ways to look at it from staying on both sides. All right, let me go ahead and switch gears here and talk a little bit about what's going on in the tech space. Apple had a big issue. They rolled out this dual authentication thing, and then within just like 24 hours, people say, "Oh, we can hack it," and they quickly took down the dual authentication. But within 24 hours, they rolled out a fix for their password reset security hole. So the I forgot site is back up. They're not hitting on all cylinders over there, are they?
Doesn't appear to be. It doesn't surprise me either. I mean, you only could stay on the top for so long.
It just makes you go, just a little bit. If they're missing stuff like that, it makes you wonder a little bit.
But they did, on a positive note, on Apple, and I know it's weird that I'm saying this, but it's they did announce a big update to their podcast app,
They did. They
and I
absolutely
think
did.
from what I'm hearing, there's a positive review coming out of from most people, and I think it's a big improvement and huge for podcasters
And it shows
and listeners. But yeah,
and it shows that they care about it and to have made the update. The biggest
yeah,
change was the ability to have channels and set a playlist. That was the biggest complaint people had when they migrated off iTunes. People are still complaining that they can't use iTunes as their, and to be honest with you, since they made the switch to the podcasting app, dedicated podcasting app within the iPhone, and also I have not been in iTunes in months. Really, I have not used iTunes at all. And to me,
Really?
that's fantastic. Some people love iTunes and use it as their major. But for me, I haven't had to be in iTunes in months. So I manage everything right here now. And the ability to set up, they call them stations, is cool. And you can basically have a little playlist set up so that you can, I put all of my favorite shows I like to listen to in a playlist. And on the airplane yesterday, they were just consecutively playing through all the new episodes, one after the other. Even though I was sleeping at times, they were subconsciously, I was listening to podcasts the entire trip back. All 13 hours I was in and out of airports yesterday. But it's nice. Well, Rob, I know you haven't, but Don, have you
yes,
updated
of course
your,
I have.
oh, you okay. Oh, so you must have a small non-phone. You must have a,
Well, I've got an iPad,
oh,
so
okay.
I can see all that stuff. I would say that what happened there with the podcast app at Apple is very similar to my experience with podcasts at Microsoft. Is that when the community screams enough and complains enough and bashes the company enough, they tend to respond. And And I think that's an important factor here as we think about the future of these platforms as well. I think that the users and the podcasters of these communities need to speak up and need to make those companies aware of that they're not happy with what the companies are doing, because it's very, very important to this industry that Apple and Microsoft and even Google, but I don't think that they're ever going to support podcasting in any significant way because they have YouTube, but that those platforms are continued to be updated and are strong. But I think that's the big thing. I mean, just look at what happened to that podcast app on Apple. The reviews in iTunes were like really, really bad for that app for a very long time, and the company responded. And I believe me, I've seen some impact of the criticism and the bashing of the podcast area for Microsoft, and it's definitely starting to get noticed at the executive level at the company. So, and it definitely helps.
Hey, Don, you know what that means?
I'm afraid to ask.
Weekly bashing of Microsoft is now authorized.
I'm not saying bashing. I'm saying constructive criticism. Please don't give me that. I get enough bashing. It's like, what's wrong with you guys for not supporting international podcasts? That's the big ask that everybody wants of our platform is international support. Because I guess from what I understand, iTunes is making podcasts available in 155 countries now, which it's a lot of countries.
And let's be honest. We have not. And let's just be straight up. We have not seen any love from Microsoft from a long time on podcasting. They have been a non-player. They killed essentially, of course, the public-facing view of the marketplace is gone. It's still there on the phone, but most people have no clue.
I don't understand why. I
do.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're talking to the guy that's in the middle of it here. So
it's because podcasting adds nothing to the Microsoft bottom line.
It's the same thing that applies to Apple too. This is not an exclusive thing. I mean, really, if you look at it from a business perspective, and that's kind of what you have to do here, is the company invests in making improvements to areas of the service that they deem as core to their business goals, right? And all the employees in the company have made commitments to improve whatever part of the service, and those are usually linked up to business justifications. And that's going to be the case at Apple as well as Microsoft and any of these other companies when it comes to building these platforms. I mean, I think what happened to Google Reader is another example, right? Of a company. I think we should probably talk about that whole Google Reader thing, but that is also another sign here that all these companies are looking at their services and saying what parts of these services have the opportunity to create revenue for the company in the long run, right? And those are the things that we're going to invest in. But the only other thing that creates opportunity to have these free services is customers actually asking for them, right? And being very vocal about it. I think that if Google had known that the reaction was going to be so strong to the shutting down of Reader, I don't know if they would have done it, So, it was almost like people that were using it were kind of quiet about it for a long period of time, and the company thought that nobody cared. So,
and a large part of reason why I have Apple products now is because they've been an ardent supporter of podcasting. I shouldn't, that's kind of a weird thing to say, but they haven't emphasized it in there. You can still find it in iTunes. You can still find it on the phone. That's probably one of the reasons. And, I guess, we can talk about this for a long time, but, Microsoft could have had a bigger market share if they had so chosen, but maybe that's a segment of the space that, again, doesn't meet their business values. I don't know. I think it's an easy segment to win over probably for very little amount of infrastructure and or they
Well, it's already
obviously
built. It's already
yeah
built. So,
yeah yeah
I mean, that's not really the issue as much as is where do you put your resources going forward, right?
yeah
I mean, it's easier to just let something run,
yeah
and that's kind of what would happen to Google Reader as well. Is that
it's true.
it really doesn't cost Google very much to run that service. It's just that where over time that service is going to get more and more neglected, and if something breaks with it, they don't have anybody assigned to fix it, right? And people are going to start expecting improvements, but Google is not thinking along those lines. So it's like this expectation versus the company's priorities are mismatched, right? And I
Yeah.
think that has a lot to do with why Google shut down Reader.
Well, let's
Um,
let's look at that a little bit. I have a theory, and this is my hypothesis on the whole Google Reader thing. In 2005, 2006, Google came in with Reader, and really just really earth-shattering, made some big bold moves, and they killed blog lines and just about every other reader in the space. I hung on to Feed Demon for years beyond when Reader was up and running. But, with Google Reader coming online in October 2005, it really had hundreds of thousands of users, and
mhm.
it really become a mainstay for a lot of companies. And then the API that they released allowed, in recent years, allowed apps to synchronize. Now, many people don't know this, but many of the podcasting apps that are out there, and as a matter of fact, I got into this into this flame fest with a guy on Facebook. He said, "Oh, no one's using Google Reader," and I'm like, "Oh, really? How come I've talked to 7 podcatcher companies that are frantic right now because what they were doing was they had
Yep.
this nice, beautiful app, and you subscribe to stuff. Well, were they maintaining and updating those RSS feeds? Nope. Guess who was updating the RSS feeds for them? Even though the people never saw them, Google Reader was. And so
Reader was, yeah.
they were syncing. So they basically had that all developed into Google Reader. So now these guys are screwed. Come July 1st, that's gone. So what?
Yep.
So we'll come back to that comment, but here's my hypothesis on this is that Google has never truly loved RSS. When they bought Blogger, they never put RSS into Blogger. It's Atom feeds
Sure.
in Blogger. When they bought FeedBurner, what did they do at FeedBurner? Nothing. They just let it run. And it still continues to run today, barely. So our
Yeah.
official position, my official position from the very beginning was don't use FeedBurner because someone else has control of your RSS feed. Now, here's what's going to happen. They're going to shut down Google Reader July 1st. And my hypothesis is within 12 months, they're going to announce the sundown of Google Reader to divest themselves completely of RSS, get people off the proverbial, I
know what you're going to say. Teat.
Yeah. So they are going to wean people off of RSS, and you now are going to have to use Google Plus and other sites like that to aggregate and get your news. So that's what's going to happen. And I'm going to write that down, say this shall happen, because I feel that strongly that's what their strategy is. They'll never say it, but I truly believe it. So
They do no evil.
whatever. Our official company policy has officially changed. We no longer tell you not to move your feed. We are telling people get off FeedBurner immediately. Leave as fast as you can. Before we were saying status quo, you'll have time. Don't worry. This isn't going to happen, but the tea leaves are just turning to a big slash mark through FeedBurner. We're telling people bail, leave, get off, do what you got to do to move now. And what we're going to do is we are going to open up our API to all those podcasting apps that are freaking out. And we're going to say, if you want to sync and get your syndication done, we'll do it for you. So because we got all that built, so it's a no-brainer for us to allow that to happen. So we've had seven different podcasting apps reach out and say we want help, and it's
Todd,
pretty. It's kind of
you're by saying that, you're actually hastening the shutdown of FeedBurner. You know that, don't you? That's the irony of what you're saying.
well. What are they going to do?
Yeah.
The writing's on the wall.
If they
No,
okay? So
yeah.
let's say they don't find a reprieve, and July 1st their apps quit working. This is March, April, May, June. So 96 days from now, if these guys, okay, here's the alternative. They say they're not going to shut down. Okay, they say they're still marching towards July 1st. Well, all right. I'm a developer. I have to build an infrastructure. I have to build a back end. You know how hard it is to build a back end? Rob, you know, Microsoft has a back end to pull RSS feeds. Is that going to be able to be put together overnight? No way. Stuff will be irreparably broken.
Oh yeah.
So
Well, I think that the same thing happened here recently to Twitter. They kind of did that, on the API side, right? So there is precedent for these companies to pull these things on third-party developers, and that's kind of what's happening here. And I mean, I think what you're talking about is more around the whole Google Reader thing. But I also know that I've heard people talk about using search engines as a base for pulling RSS.
right.
And I don't know how realistic that is to actually do that. I've heard talk that, I mean, a lot of the big search engines have RSS feeds in their index, and if there would be a way to parse those search engines to build a catalog, I think it's possible to be able to do that. So that may also be another option to build a podcast catalog, if that's what we're really talking about here. But I also think that, just like what you said, I think there is a need for, let's say, a master open catalog of podcasters for multiple reasons, that is less dependent on a particular service, like a Microsoft or a Google or a Apple or whatever, to aggregate a comprehensive podcast directory. And back in the early days with Dave Weiner, he had talked about doing that with the OPML standard.
Yeah.
Back in the early days of podcasting, to create an open catalog, basically, of all podcasts that is independent of any particular proprietary service. And I do believe that there is a need for that. I think today there isn't any. I think Apple has the master catalog, obviously, of all podcasts, but Apple's not exactly very transparent on that, and isn't really forthcoming with information about what that catalog is comprised of and how many are actually in there. It's always this vague number. And I mean, I try and put out there with our catalog exactly how many podcasts that we have, and I've been doing that for many years. But I think it's a huge hole in the overall, kind of podcasting, the industry, right, of being able to pull it all together. It's just a bunch of cats all going off and then doing their own thing. And it's like, I try and pull this community together. I know, Todd, that's what you do every day. But I just wish it was easier to pull everybody together more.
Well, we had talked, and Rob, you and I had talked privately about some things that we had already had planned.
Yeah.
And this just kind of hastens some of that. We thought we had a longer timeline to roll out some new stuff that we're going to roll out, and that, and now it becomes almost, I'm getting phone calls from guys that are panicked. They're in absolute sheer panic.
Yeah.
On what they're going to do. And it is a lot of, and like I saw this guy on Facebook, you have no clue what's going on in the back end of these apps. You don't know where that syndication has to happen somewhere. Believe me, the syndication doesn't happen within the app. The app doesn't do, that's largely not done. That's an overhead that is pretty large. Now, a few may. I'm not saying all don't, but I don't know. We'll see. Don, where's your thoughts on this?
It's kind of like, I understand the problem, but it's also kind of like we're in the Wild West. When if you step back, we're really in the infancy, as crazy as it sounds, in this whole space, this whole podcasting technology space. I also think that there's such a huge opportunity here for someone to step up to the plate. Rob, you mentioned, that Apple isn't too transparent, but, really, is Apple transparent about anything? Are any of these companies, Microsoft, Google, are they transparent about what their plans are down the road? Things just happen overnight, like they're pulling the RSS aggregator, and it's like, wow, what's going on? But
Yep.
it also opens up opportunities for other people, and that's a huge opportunity. And you know what? There's a lot of money to be made in that space for the right company. There's a lot of opportunity there and a lot of money there.
I think.
Well, Don, I think you're right on I think what you're saying, and I think what we're seeing as a response to that is a lot of very good third party podcasting and new media apps that are coming out. I think that they're carving out a segment of the market, especially on the mobile side, that is siphoning away users from
Yes.
Microsoft and Apple. There's no question that that's happening today. And because in a lot of ways, that's where the innovation is happening. You look at Stitcher and a variety of other podcast aggregator apps out there. The question I keep coming back to is, very few of these companies are actually building their own catalogs from scratch. They're doing like what Todd's talking about. They're using these APIs, pulling off of other aggregator services and building those catalogs. I mean, that's happening with the Zune catalog too. There's 2 apps out there, 3 apps out there, mobile apps that are tapping into my Zune APIs and using the Zune catalog to build those apps. So let's say Microsoft decides that they're going to shut down those APIs. Those apps are done,
Yeah, they're toast.
Well,
I wonder if one of the I just wonder if there's an opportunity for one of the hardware manufacturers, maybe live stream. Maybe I don't think Newtek will definitely not be in that space. But I often wonder. You need a company that has some backbone and has some money to put at this. And I think in time you're going to see either an organization that bonds everybody together will deal with this on an overall, matter, or there'll be a company that manufactures equipment and CDN services that will take this under their wing. Because at the end of the day, I don't think podcasting is going to go away. RSS is not going to go away. Something has to sync all this stuff, and there's a huge need for it now. Be interesting to have this conversation 2 years from now. But right now we're in the middle of the storm, so to speak. But that also creates opportunity, and there are a lot of sharp companies out there, and maybe they start an overall organization that will figure out how to address this problem. I don't know. I just don't know. It's an interesting situation, but again, we're really in the infancy, in the embryonic stages of this whole technology.
I think what the bloggers are going to be fine. They are, Feedly's going to come in and step up. There's going to be, matter of fact, they're winning right now. They're the company that's probably going to have the most to gain from a user financial standpoint. I already said if Feedly comes out with a paid system, sign me up for it. I need a replacement system for Reader. It's integral part of my show prep.
That's probably what you're using right now, isn't it? Is Google Reader for the news that you're covering for this show?
Yeah. So I'm migrating, and Feedly's promised to be ready before July 1st to take on that heavy lift. And people need to realize that aggregation business. We aggregate 13,000, 14,000 feeds right now with at Blueberry.com. When you go over to the website, and then let me just bring up the browser here. Let me go to Net One. When you go over to the Explorer and then you browse all programs, that catalog, let's see here, CPL Poker Podcast just released their recent show. So if I load that show, that data that filled this most recent area here, this stuff from here down, we had to go out and aggregate that. We pulled their feed and syndicated that into our system. That data is now in our database. That is not dynamically generated. That would be too much of a load. So, we spent many, many thousands of hours making sure that our syndication engine would be able to handle all the stupid stuff people do to their feeds, all the invalid stuff, everything that you can imagine under the sun that people put in a blog post that do it correctly and incorrectly, you had to plan for. And even now, once in a while, we'll see somebody has done something where we have to make a change. So, that building that is done. We have that in place, and we can pull 14,000 feeds now with no issue. Now, if you ramp that up and you look at what Feedly's going to have to do, Feedly's going to have to pull not 14,000 feeds. They're going to have to pull 1 million feeds. And that's, or whatever's in there that people have subscribed to. Now, they're not going to have to build a master directory. People are going to go in and add feeds, but I'm sure to be completely successful, they are going to have some sort of discovery component. So they are going to have a base of feeds in their system. So, Feedly has already got their infrastructure. Well, they don't. They've been pulling from Google Reader API too. So what they're in the process now of building is essentially what we luckily have already built at on our basically our generator package is the syndication portion, but they have to do it at a much bigger scale.
Todd, I think after almost beating this subject to death, it seems clear to me that you are the man that needs to take this project on and solve this.
Not on the blogging side. Not on the blogging side. No.
Well, and let's be really clear that RSS is not going away. XML is the big change that's happening is our RSS is going to go computer to computer or device to server,
right? And
it's going to be less what the individual will use to get access to this stuff. And that's been going on for years. There's nothing new about that. But I think that this shift that we're seeing, this whole discussion that RSS is dead, I think is bull. It's not.
You have to feed the machine with something.
Yeah. And it's a very efficient way of doing that. And I think it's what's a little bit counterintuitive, and I'm going to throw this out here too, is that I think I've seen a trend of podcasters not putting their RSS feeds on their websites, right? They would just link directly over to iTunes or to Zune in the past, and then that would be it. I think we're coming into this period now where it may seem counterintuitive, but I still think that podcasters need to make sure that their RSS feeds are visible on their website and be able to be picked up by search engines, or future opportunities to have a more open catalog to be able to find that stuff, right? And not have to be in direct contact with someone to be able to grab that. Though that may sound a little counterintuitive, and it's not going to be put there for a listener to use, but it's going to be put there for automated search, type of situation. I still think it's important to have your RSS feed on your website and available. Well, it doesn't have to be at the top of the page or anything like that. It just needs to be somewhere.
Well, let's just look at it two ways too. Is that as far as I'm concerned, all I care about is the audience consuming the content. Yeah. I want them to consume on a tablet, on an iPhone, on the website, on a mobile app, whatever way they consume is fantastic. That I don't care. I just want them to be able to consume. Yep. The RSS really, and let's get down to the brass tacks, is the vehicle that drives all those little systems that, so it's not going away. And I don't want the consumer to ever be concerned about the RSS feed. I want them to be able to just consume whatever way they want to consume on an app.
Well, most consumers don't even know what the RSS feed is. And it's behind the scenes.
Yeah, and that's the bigger message here.
Right,
yeah.
and that is a bigger message. But when it comes to the actual delivery and still, iTunes would not exist today with the podcast feeds. They pull the RSS feed. So, you take the RSS feed out of the equation. How do you distribute? There isn't a methodology to do that. And you can get it via the web or just come to a website and hit play, but that defeats much of the purpose of what the space is about. But I just think that ultimately, Google's goal is to depreciate RSS, and they want you to consume a different way. But ultimately, you go to Google Plus. What's feeding Google Plus? Well, there's apps already out there. They're taking RSS feeds and pushing it into Google Plus. So the consumer is going to go to Google Plus and get stuff. I don't care if they consume on Google Plus or not. But how did that ultimately get in there in the first place?
Todd, let me throw out something else too. I've been doing a lot of thinking about too. Is the next evolution of what we're doing here, creating RSS feeds of streaming links to our content, is more the future. And part of the reason why I say that is that, boy, there's just so much momentum around the capability of advertising. You just look at Blip, and I think it's a classic example of what I'm talking about here. Blip will block you in playing a podcast off of an RSS feed outside of, I think, iTunes and Zune. At least that's been the recent history. And part of the reason that they're doing that is that they want to be able to deliver streaming ads against all of the content that's hosted on their platform.
Well, let's rephrase this though. Remember, on Blip, it's not live. Okay, so let's just be straight with that.
It's streaming on demand. I'm not talking about live streaming.
Okay, so streaming on demand. But the problem that they have, and the reason why they don't allow people to aggregate anymore, is they still can't serve ads through the only way they can serve a pre-roll dynamically is on a web page. And you have to go to that web page on the device, and you have to look at it in their browser. That's the only way. That's easy to do. Anyone can do that as a podcaster too. They can put a player on their website that when they click play, plays a little ad first, and then plays the podcast. That is absolutely a no-brainer from the ability to deliver advertising. That can be done. I mean, that's just a couple of days worth of development work. But ultimately, that media is still coming from a downloadable file. And the only thing Blip has done is they have said, we can't monetize the downloadable portion, so we're not going to allow the downloadable portion to happen. So where's the limitation from that? The limitation is okay.
Sorry about that.
The limitation is because they're not. We can't. It's so far we've had a hard time doing that here. So ultimately, Blip has basically cut out the portions of their service they can't monetize, but they're still, technically doing an on-demand type of thing.
But I guess my point is that technically there's no reason that they have to do it that way, right? I guess it gets back to what's the capabilities of these aggregator platforms to be able to support
it's not
a streaming protocol versus a downloading protocol.
It's not we had introduced MetaMarks, and we tried to get some groundstream going where podcasters could put MetaMarks in that would allow us to read the RSS feed and know that you play this pre-roll, you play this piece of the podcast, at this portion of the podcast, you do a pop-up. We had all that built into MetaMarks. It is possible. It just, people have to adopt it, and we have to get, the next portion is to get the players to support it.
Yep. It's all about the players. It's the end at the client level is where we have the problem.
And the challenge is when you are dealing with on-demand media, ultimately, I don't care what people say. They go the Blip app on an iPhone. Guess what they're doing? They're downloading on demand a media file, and unless if built the pre-roll ad into their media player, fantastic. That's what they've done. But what we found with the monetization of pre-roll, For us, financially, it doesn't make a lot of sense. They pay so little on
Yeah.
pre-roll.
Yeah.
And, so what Blip is trying to do is they're doing an economy of scale. Enough pre-rolls will make them enough money to pay their bills. There's no reason why you can't.
Yeah.
So,
So I guess, they need to evolve too. They're playing at the base minimum level of what works out there, and I guess the ad buyers are actively buying that pre-roll
Right.
for streaming, right?
Yep.
And they all understand it.
let's
That's
say,
not where the money is.
Let's say on-demand streaming, because there's a different. We're live streaming right now.
Yeah.
You when you get done, you're doing on-demand streaming or on-demand viewing. Yeah, it's the terms blur there and people get confused. But
But it feels like that the opportunity for monetization is around in content, not pre-roll, right?
Well, there's monetization in pre-roll if you've got enough content. If you've got enough volume.
But I think most people get turned off by pre-roll at the very beginning, and you're going to lose audience.
Well, a certain number of people are going to leave. Yeah, I agree. I don't know, Don. What do you think about pre-roll advertising?
I think what happens, at least with my brain, because I have extreme ADD, as soon as I see something on YouTube, I wait the 2 seconds for the skip and just hit that as soon as I can.
Everybody does that, yeah.
I'm not a big fan of pre-roll advertising. It's an interesting topic, and the more I listen to people discuss it, the more diverse opinions I'm finding there are out there. And essentially, what's going to happen is, again, some big boy is going to have to come in and say, "I see the opportunity. This is something we want to do." And I think at the end of the day, everybody will be happy. They'll make money. They'll make money monetizing it. They'll make money offering the service, if you will, even if it's at a very inexpensive rate, because people will want to pay for something that they know works and is managed. Truth of the matter is, we're all at the mercy. I mean, we're using Skype right now. It's not costing us a penny. There's a lot of services that we take for granted that are quote unquote free, and it's tough making money when things are free, and that's what makes everything roll. The RSS situation is essentially it's a free background engine that takes a lot of resources, and I don't know the answer. I just don't. It's interesting, as I said, from a discussion standpoint of view, from an intellectual standpoint of view, seeing what everybody has to say about it. But at the end of the day, it's all about what you said, the money.
I told 2 years ago I started telling, and Rob can verify this. 2 years ago I started telling TPN members get off Blip because they're going to shut down the pipe. Oh man, I took a ration of. They double barrel shotgunning me, that's never going to happen, and then we basically then we employed a new rule. If you're on Blip and you're feeding your video via RSS feed, you can't be on the set-top boxes because the performance isn't there. It just sits there and the wheel just spins consistently. Because they were throttling the video experience.
Oh, yeah.
And people, no, that's not happening. And I'm like, yes, it is. We're seeing it. And then what does Blip do? They completely decimate the podcasting, the RSS feeds. And
well, Todd and I heard last week that that they've now, Blip has disabled the function to be able to actually publish any new series content into a podcast feed.
Right.
So they've completely shut it down. They're going to maintain support for it with their existing customers that actually have been using it.
Oh.
But going forward, any new content providers, it's been turned off.
Well, not surprised. And so guess what that means? Then the podcasters have to go, you mean I have to pay for bandwidth? Oh.
And there's YouTube to the rescue, right?
But guess what? YouTube is what? A closed infrastructure. So you're at the mercy of them putting advertising in your stuff. And if you are lucky, you might make a few pennies.
And SoundCloud is like that, right?
Yeah.
Even Stitcher's like that. I mean, Stitcher's not so much that because they don't actually generate their own RSS
Well,
feeds,
you
but
don't make no revenue with them.
yeah, well, that's probably that's a different issue,
Yeah.
but there's Sprinker and these other sites. I get pinged about, on Twitter. I see this question. Um, you know, I'm getting my audience asking me to host all my content on SoundCloud, and I like to post back to them. I say there's no compelling reason for you to move from your own hosting account to host all of your episodes up on SoundCloud,
Right.
right? Treat SoundCloud as just an additional distribution
That's right.
platform
If you want
for
to go
you.
through the pain of uploading to another location, right?
Yeah, but don't put all your content, take it down from your own servers up on SoundCloud and generate the RSS feed off of that.
Right.
We have no idea. SoundCloud could shut down a year from now.
Hey, guess.
You're going to be out of luck.
Wow. Novel concept. Companies that are startups that run out of money and shut down.
I know. Well, even big companies shut stuff down too, so it's not necessarily a guarantee, right?
And, and I did not make a friend over at a new RSS aggregation company when I told him I would not recommend your service ever. Largely, I don't know what your financial stability is. I'm not a believer in your service whatsoever to begin with. He was pissed. I mean, he was really upset at me. And there was an email chain. He says, "You're a leader in this space. How can you say that?" I said, "Because I'm looking out for the better. I'm looking out for the constituents that I'm going to have to undo if you ever disappear."
Yeah.
And hey, this whole shutdown of Reader and the potential of FeedBurner shutting down. It's for me, and I don't want to say this. It's not like we told you so, but when we are now getting consultation calls, where people are paying for consultation for us to help them to move, for us, it's a financial windfall. It's not the type of money I like to make, because you don't, it's like we're going 3 steps backwards, and then you're having to readjust and make a change and move and change, and then you're back to equilibrium again. So you really gain nothing, and just went through a lot of I'm going to say it politely, okoli pain. In Hawaii, you can imagine what okoli means. I'm sitting on it. So
Again, I think there's no one more
I don't know where to go now.
qualified to tackle this problem than you, Todd. I can't reinforce that enough.
But
You agree, Rob?
Yeah.
but Rob, going back to I don't know if I'm 100% on board saying that we have to have what we did think that there would be a great opportunity for podcasters to be able to monetize via pre-roll and do pop-ups and surveys within their podcast. And we basically put Metacast in this system, in the PowerPress plugin, specifically to accomplish that. We just need some media players that have media players to adopt the standard we've already set up. And we can easily, within days, ramp up all these cool features that you're talking about.
Why? See, one other thing too is I don't entirely understand why the industry hasn't supported dynamic ad insertion technology, which already exists out there, as a possible solution for this this pre-roll dilemma that the industry seems to feel like they have. I don't know. What's your thought on that?
Well, large of it's because of the way this content's being delivered. I can't pre-roll into an iPhone. Oh, shit. Oh, that was nice.
But
went to
dynamic insertion is what I'm talking about.
Did the live set come up there?
Yeah.
I did.
Dynamic, because I bounced across the switcher. The dynamic insertion, it's not cost effective. So in other words, if someone clicks, so if I want to deliver there's been several companies that have the technology. Where are they?
Libsyn Pro is one.
Right.
They have it.
Yep. And another company that I don't even think is in business anymore. Are they selling ads into that? I read the Libsyn, their financial results every quarter, and I don't see them having a huge advertising dollars coming in for advertising. So that means that system is not working. And not
Well,
enough that,
Well,
no. It's capable to any content provider to use that technology. It doesn't necessarily directly connect to Libsyn selling advertising on the part of content providers. It could be turned on by, so let's say you get an ad deal with GoDaddy that wants to
right,
run a video spot. You could go into the tool when you publish your episode, and you could associate by geo-targeting, if you chose to, US or even by state almost, the delivery of an ad that would be dynamically added to whatever episode that you have.
the way media
Yeah.
buyers are buying stuff now, that has to be done by the media buyer. It can't be done by the podcaster because they're dynamically buying ads based upon
Yep.
where you've been. Media buyers, when they buy pre-rolls now, they're generally pretty targeted. They know that you have visited whatever.com looking at whatever dot product, and they are going to deliver that product to you via an ad, via the targeting that they have.
So you're talking about an independent third party type of
Yeah,
service that plugs into your ad insertion
right,
technologies.
right.
So it could be possible to be able to connect that
Yeah,
with a service, via an API or something like
sure.
that, and have that third party service run that on the part of the
And
advertiser
we're
that
already
would plug into that system.
we're already doing that on, it's already possible. And I'm saying we, but it's already possible to do that on Roku and other devices. But the challenge that you should run into is that they want to buy video. They don't want to
Yeah,
buy audio.
which you can do that. I mean, you can do it with both. You can do it with audio and video.
They're not
And actually, the dynamic insertion technology allows you to even put in timestamps and to be able to do in-content
right.
insertion as well.
But I don't know of anyone that's buying audio
I know.
dynamic insertion.
I know.
Video only.
And
this is
and why is that, I
very
wonder? That's the question. Anyway, go ahead.
this is very similar to the digital signage industry, which I've been involved with for probably since its inception. But in the digital signage industry, you have the media buyers, and quite frankly, it's all based in terms of compensation on eyeballs. And for example, we run probably the largest digital sign in Toronto at Yonge and Dundas Square, and it's an enormous sign. It's like 3 stories tall. You can actually walk inside of this thing, and they have similar issues in terms of how much content do you put on the system opposed to how much advertising. Because if the board, if you will, the board becomes nothing but an advertising machine, no one's going to watch that. Take that same board and, as I said, stick it in front of Yonge and Dundas Square, where there's an enormous shopping mall and center, and they advertise something that mention this ad and get 5% off your next pair of shoes or whatever. All of a sudden, everybody wants that quote pre-roll or that particular ad that repeats itself so many times per hour, per minute. And they actually have software put out by a company called Scala, SCALA, that's been in this space probably from the inception of it. But what happened in Yonge and Dundas Square is quite interesting, because that was the only board and the largest board for 2 years. Rev forward 3 more years, that's now the smallest sign that's in the square, and every building alongside of it has signs. So it's like a Broadway in New York City. It's just a ton of digital signs, high def digital signs, and some have some ads because it faces this way, some have different ads because it faces that way. The amount of infrastructure, of money that's required to purchase a digital sign. I mean, the small digital sign that size is $1 million, and you've got to get a lot of ad revenue to offset that, to just to get the payback on the sign itself. Never mind the digital software that goes in to control that, the electricity that it takes to run. So it's very similar to the podcasting space, where they're trying to monetize essentially make money. But if you really look at it at the end of the day, how many podcasters, this is kind of a different subject, but it isn't. How many podcasters at the end of the day are able to make a living? Podcasting, a lot of it's just, a love of the science, of the technology. So
That's
a
true.
lot of the podcasters don't have a lot of money to invest, like pay for bandwidth. Like, what's that? Are you kidding
Yeah.
me? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that go into this. The technology side of it is one element, but again, the other side of it is, do the customers want to watch a pre-roll? Probably not. But does a podcaster want to make money off it? Yeah. But at the end of the day, I don't think a lot of podcasters, probably the large majority, are not making money from this endeavor. And there's only so much money that they're willing to invest out of their pocket to do this endeavor. So I think there's a lot of things in this. Technology is just one aspect, but when I look at the digital signage industry, uh, there's not many profitable digital signs out there if they really do the economics of it. There are some situations like in Broadway in New York City where they get a premium for these ads. But I'm seeing digital signs now in high schools, and it's all about the content. You drive by on the street and you see, football game tonight or hockey game. Not too much hockey out here in Arizona, but uh, they're very similar types of things that are going on both in the digital signage world. There's only so many dollars that are facing so many ads on so many spaces. And the beauty of the podcast business is that there's hundreds of thousands of podcasts, so it makes it more enticing, if you will, for an advertiser to get a return on that investment. But again, for most podcasters, at the end of the day, they're not making a lot of money on this,
And
and that's just
I,
the way it is.
I look at it from an economy of scale too. And believe me, if I thought that pre-rolls would help bankroll salaries at Raw Voice, we would have long ago implemented something that would have made it automatic, where we could say, go ahead and just fill it. Because what ends up happening, I think Don hit on a good space, is that a number of okay, so if you're a small show, and let's just say you have 1,000 people listening to your podcast, does the podcaster want to alienate those 1,000 listeners when he's going to make $10 a month on advertising? If a show's got 100,000 listeners, he has to alienate the listeners to keep the podcasting going because he's incurring a certain amount of expenses on hosting and so forth. So
Yep.
the majority of shows being smaller, they're going to say, no, I don't want that pre-roll there. I love the content. Let me build the content. Let me build the show, and let me worry about advertising when I get to 100,000 listeners. So, and that's being extreme. But one of the successes that we continue to have is that I don't look at show size when we're building advertising deals for vendors. At the end, we total everything up and see what we've got. But the main thing is we're trying to connect advertisers with the right audiences, and that's where we get the premium on the advertising rate. Is it perfect? No. Is there more money to be made? Yes. Are we leaving money on the table? Probably. But at what price?
Yeah. And so one other piece of this too, as you think about the kind of holistic market for podcasts is that the average podcast consumer, right, or listener or viewer tends to subscribe to, let's say, and these are numbers that I've seen on our platform, anywhere from 4 to 6 subscriptions or shows that they consume passing through any kind of aggregator platform. And so you think about, as more and more shows launch, right, how fast is the potential user base or listener base for podcasting? Is it growing at the same rate that we're adding new shows? Or are we not growing the overall market of viewers for podcasts as fast as we're growing the new content that's coming into the space? So if we're not growing the audience as fast as we're growing the content, then the number of shows that we have are basically kind of cannibalizing other shows to get shows or to get viewers, right? So we're not
true.
really gaining. So what one piece of this too is, how do we get more people to be aware of this content, to be able to subscribe to it so we can grow the overall user base? So as we grow shows, there's a potential audience that could be monetized over time.
We just need to make sure that the whatever glass they're using to connect to content, it's easy. That's
Yep.
that's the ultimate, that's the ultimate solution. And I don't have any stats in front of me on, where we are from an audience standpoint. I know the audience numbers continue to grow, but, I also see a huge number of shows that pod fade too. So that is, as many
Yeah.
come in that start, within a year, a brand new show, has about a 1 in 10 or maybe 2 in 10, 2 in 10 will survive a full year.
Is that what it is? 2 and 10?
Yeah, it's probably about 2 in 10, maybe 3 in 10, but most don't make it past show 7 or episode 7.
I'm
So is
curious,
that-
and I don't even know if you know the answer. If there, maybe you do. If you had to do a chart and plot it out, your bell curve, if you will, how many shows are 100,000, 500,000 opposed to 500 or less?
Right. I think that's I'm getting feedback somehow. I think that's a good question. I've never done a bell curve on it. I know
I'd love to know that.
Yeah.
I mean, out of all the X amount of podcasts,
right.
if we did a bell curve, that
What the
I think you would see that really weighted. I mean, really weighted towards the, under 1,000. I don't know.
It's hard to say.
I've never. I just don't know. I'm curious.
It's
The other
something
thing that I think Rob brought up that was interesting is based on the percentage of podcast fades, how many new shows are starting on a, let's just say, a monthly basis
Right.
versus how many are pod fading. I think it's an I think it's an interesting dynamic. It'd be interesting to see that curve, I think.
And I think what happens too is people have unrealistic expectations. When they first start, they say, I'm going to have this great show, and they get to episode 3, 4, 5, 6, and they only got 100 people listening, but they've done, I'm getting feedback.
Yeah, it seems to be coming from your end, Todd.
Oh, that's weird.
Hey, also, one thing that I've seen happen on the kind of Zune podcast platform over the years, and this has been a common thing that I've seen, is this concept of subscribing and unsubscribing is an interesting phenomenon because month over month, I typically see more new subscribers than unsubscribes. But it's been very close to a 1-to-1 ratio, which tells me that people are cycling through shows pretty quickly, but they're finding a certain amount of shows that they stick with over the long run. But that's a fairly small number. But people are churning through new shows all the time.
How many of those that unsubscribe resubscribe?
Well, they'll subscribe to something different, right? So it's almost like they're searching for something that they connect with. And that's been a consistent thread for years that I've seen, is that it's almost a 1-to-1 ratio on a weekly basis that people are cycling through shows. They're unsubscribing and then subscribing, and then there's one part of it that I've never seen data on is what percentage of consumption is not around subscription. And I believe that there's a stronger movement towards people just going in and going to that series and just clicking play and never engaging at the subscription level, right?
Yeah, that's CPP, cherry picking podcast.
Well, it's also sampling, right? It's sampling new stuff, right? And it's also going in and kind of cherry picking what they want to listen to without fully engaging in a subscription, right?
CPP,
And
cherry picking podcasting.
And another dynamic would be is to look at the shows they're being unsubscribed from and look at their publishing schedule. We know for a fact that shows that publish on a schedule on the same day every week or every 2 shows a week, whatever it is, they stay subscribed to at a much higher rate than shows that are just haphazardly throwing a show out once a month on whatever date.
Yep.
And that goes back to the whole podcast 101 thing. But guys, we've been at this almost 2 hours, so we need to bring this to an end. or the download's going to get so big that people will not download this show. I will say that I know that Rob was asking me how we're doing on numbers on this show, and I know those of you that have hung to the end here, we're getting a lot of podcasters subscribing to the show. And actually, I had a few emails from people saying, don't read my email on the air, but basically I'm listening, keep the good stuff coming up. This is, basically being told this is invaluable content. We would appreciate public comments. It definitely helps us in, getting ideas on what you want to hear from us. We try to cover a little tech, and obviously we've been focusing a lot on the media space over the past 3 or 4 months and bringing on guests from other networks, and what we're going to continue to do that. And if nothing else, Rob and I are getting our brains full of good information from other networks. And quite honestly, if no one else gains anything out of this, I could care less. Because we always do this content for ourselves. But no, we want to hear from you. If you have comments on the show, geeknews@gmail.com. If you know someone in the podcasting space that you think would be adding some value to the show, let us know. We'll ask them to be on. And but Rob, I know you've had some emails out there. Who's on tap here? And any bites on who's going to be on the next upcoming shows?
Well, none that I can really announce here. But I've been reaching out to a lot of different kinds of people, and part of what I'm trying to accomplish is I'm trying to bring in people that a lot of podcasters are not aware of, that are significant players in this space, and trying to bring them into the fold and give them a forum to communicate from a community perspective, and then also sharing of contacts and information, I think is so important in this space. It's something that I do every day. I mean, I try and reach out to new podcast networks, and ones that have been around for a while that just don't have any community connection and have never even been exposed on any kind of a podcast about podcasting. And that's not necessarily what this show is, but it tends to move that direction quite a bit. And that's because of who we are, right? Todd and I are living and breathing this every day as a full-time job. And so it's natural that it would come to the surface here. And it's where our expertise comes. And I definitely want to get as many podcasters connected to my Twitter account and to this show as we can, to help move this whole industry forward. And it's one thing that both of us have dedicated our careers to. So if you have contributions that can be given to this show and to what we're doing here, please send me a Twitter post, and that's at Rob Greenlee, and that's GREENLEE. And I will respond to you. If you have a podcast that you want to submit to the Zune Windows Phone podcast catalog, send it to me there as well. And I'd be happy to add it, and I will reply to you and let you know that it has been.
And one thing that we're also considering is a slight change in branding. So we may actually be looking at a slight name change to the show to try to more bring it into line with some of the stuff we've been talking about over the past few months. So if you have an idea on how we should rebrand or rename the show, send us that email as well. Rob, if you've got any ideas, we've already shifted quite a bit on the show content over the past 3 or 4 months. Let me know if you've got an idea, because we can always rebrand, and that's always important in bringing in new eyeballs and earballs too. As a matter of fact, the content's been so heavy media centric lately; it's not so much tech anymore.
Maybe we should just call it the new media show or something like that.
Oh, yeah, that's actually pretty good. The new media show. That's that actually makes a lot of sense. Don, what do you think? Think this should be the new media? We got the Gadget Professor. We've got Geek News Central. The new media show sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, actually. It does.
Well, we'll have to take an executive voting on that. I don't think that would be very difficult to make the change.
I don't think so either. I think actually, it might be really, really good, because I think it would have a name that would be instantly positive for trying to reach as many podcasters as we can with the show.
Yeah, let me Google that, see if anybody else has taken that. The new
That's
I
going
don't
to be a
believe
tough
so.
one.
The new media show.
Todd,
I
I
say
was
it's
actually
gone.
thinking about launching my own show called the New Media Show. So we might as well
Uh-oh.
just do it all here.
Just rename it here.
Yeah.
Well, should we, at the end of the show, consider it a done deal and rename the show from the Morning Tech
A
Show?
new show is born.
Or rebranded the New Media Show. I have to get Brian working on album art so we can update the album art. Okay,
Yes,
well,
yes, a new show has been born right
yeah,
on our live stream.
yeah.
Well, folks, if you've stayed with us for the 2 hours plus, you actually have witnessed history in the making.
So what we'll do is next Saturday will be the official relaunch of the New Media Show.
So,
like it.
Todd, does this mean that I'm the father of this show because I named it?
Yeah, I guess I does that mean now I'm the co-host? Is that how that works?
No, I don't think it has anything to do with that. But no, you own all the equipment, the infrastructure, everything. It's your show.
He does the hard part.
Yeah. Okay, guys, let's get off in here. And wow, 2 hours. This is crazy. Don, I know you've got a rodeo to go to, so have
I
fun.
am taking my mother to the rodeo. That is true.
And where can they find the Gadget Professor?
That's real easy at thegadgetprofessor.com. And you can certainly email me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at thegadgetprofessor@gmail.com. And I do answer all my email, believe it or not.
And your show is growing. You're doing great.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Appreciate it.
And always got
I
fun.
owe it all to you, Todd. As I said, you are the, in my eyes, the guru of podcasting, and I know all the work and 24/7 dedication that you put into this. And it's, as I've always said, it's very impressive to me. And I don't think people realize how much you actually do and how dedicated you are. So, as usual, I tip my hat to you. It's always been a pleasure working with you.
I appreciate it, Don. So, and you know what's kind of funny is I finally did get a little bit of accolades from Leo at the last podcast awards. I finally got a little credit. So, yeah, we try. But hey, those of you, what were you gonna say?
Todd, I wanted to mention
Sure.
one other thing. Here the last couple of weeks, I did launch a new email contact address for the Windows Phone podcast area. It's just podcasts@microsoft.com. So it's another email address that's better than my my personal email to send your podcast feeds to.
Podcast@microsoft.com. That just shows that they still earn business at Microsoft for podcasting. Cool.
Yeah, I got that done here in the last couple of weeks. So
well, nice of them to do that for you. Makes it simpler. That's for sure.
Yep.
All right, everyone, geeknews@gmail.com is a place to email, and see if I can secure some new email addresses, too, that we can use on the show. So, everyone, thanks for being here, and welcome to the New Media Show. Everyone, take care. We'll see you next time. Aloha.
Okay, bye.
Bye, everyone.